Hello everybody, welcome to this deck profile for Kaiju Trains. And a card by card look. This deck is a deck primarily built for going second, and does so because Kaijus are one of the best removal tools in the entire game. There is very few things that can actually stop you from Kaijuing somebody outside of stupid stuff like Rongo or other special summoning floodgates. And with plenty of other valuable tech options, you can make this pretty much any way you want to go second, and it'll work pretty much all the time. And this is very much a rogue deck. I did hit Plat 1 with this a few days ago as of this recording, so if you're looking for something that's fun, you like hitting things really hard, and you like that feeling when you play a giant minion and it just smacks the shit out of that board, this is the deck for you. So let's go right now for the card by card. So starting off, of course, we got our standard hand traps. Maxi, Ash Blossom. I only run back 2 Maxi because I feel like, yes, consistency is important for drawing these, but it's very rare for the game to go on for more than like 2 of these uses. And Ash at 3 is standards. It just hits so many things, can stop so many combos flat if you know choke points and all that stuff. Got a 1 of Ruffian Railcar here. This is a bit of a brick, but it makes for great discard fodder with something like Switchyard or just linking off if you happen to go first. Like if you could say get this plus Bullet Train, you can link it off into something like Double-Headed Anger Knuckle or Cleave for Genius, and then you'll get a search for a level 10, and that can help get you started on your next turn. Pegasus is one of the combo starters of this deck, coming with 2 very useful effects. For one thing, this is a Monster Reborn on a stick, only for Earth machines, so we can't revive something like Jizukiru, or one of the XCs that aren't Earth machines. But still, overall, an incredibly useful card. And the second effect, and the real reason I pretty much use this card, is because you could target any other monster on your field, and then target the Unicorn, or any other minion. But most of the time you'll be using this effect on the Unicorn itself. So you put this on the board, you target something that's level 10 on the board, like Derek, then you target the Unicorn again, and then it becomes level 10. And then you can just make your plays from there. Quick caveat, you have to be careful. You cannot declare attacks the turn you activate this effect except with Xyz monsters. That can catch you, especially if you're doing something like Pegasus Derek and then have a Jizukiru alongside it to try to get rid of it. Or to try to secure the game. You won't be able to do that. I've gotten tripped up a couple of times on this before. So just always kind of watch your back on that. Okay. Let's go over our Kaiju package now that we're here. Humongous, Gameciel, Gardarla are all low attack Kaijus. They're all just like the standard removal. Gardarla in particular, if you hate Tribrig Lyralisk, this thing completely dumpsters the Wind Barrier statue, which is always fun. And of course we have 3 Jizukiru because he's got 2 great things for us. 1, level 10. 2 is a machine. Both those things work just fine for us, so I'm just say here. And then with this Kaiju package, we also have Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. This is an excellent card. It's a dark hole that also puts a body on the field for you, which is gonna be Jizukiru. And of course, you generally try to put the lowest attack Kaiju on, like Gameciel or Humongous, but it doesn't really matter because in general, the most useful part of it is just the dark hole. But a quick caveat on this is that 1, since it special summons your stuff directly from the deck, this can get ashed, so be careful of that. And 2, you have to have Kaijus with different names in your deck. So if you get unlucky and happen to draw, say, Humongous and Gameciel in your starting hand, you're only going to be able to use Interrupted Kaiju Slumber once before it gets turned off. But of course, this also has the great effect where, when this is in the graveyard except the turn that it's sent there, you can banish this and search a Kaiju. And, you know, if it happens to get turned off, you could just use this card as discard fodder, and then you could just bring out Jizukiru anytime. Or any other Kaiju. I can tell you that people fucking hate seeing Kaijus getting searched because they know something's gonna go. Nothing else in the Kaiju stuff really matters. Kyoto Waterfront is definitely like not a terrible option, but the sheer value you get from this field spell, we'll get to that, is so good. You just can't. You can't go without. It's hard to go without this. Anyway, let's get back to the normal stuff. Night Express Knight, this is another combo starter. Can't be special to some of the deck, so can't urgent schedule this, but that is fine, because that does not apply to the graveyard, so you can bring this back with Pegasus, in case things get kind of dicey, you know. But, you know, just a big thing, and this is one of the bonuses where if you're playing against someone who's popped skill drain like Eldritch, this thing becomes literally just a normal sunnable 3k beat stick. That is pretty scary for a lot of people, especially if they don't know this interaction with trains. Then we get into Derek. This is one of the most important cards in the entire deck, and you want to have this like as much as possible in your hand. Because when you play any Earth Machine, if it gets summoned in any way, normal or special, you can just bring this out alongside it. Its stats get halved. Of course, this gets negated with skill drain, so funny haha stuff there. But the more important part is what happens when you make an Xyz with it. Because when this becomes an overlay unit, when you detach this to use an Xyz effect, you can pop anything on the field. It's one of the most useful things, and is basically one of the best ways to get rid of either a problem back row, or just go get rid of their lone monster for the game. And we have 2 copies of Bullet Train here. Definitely a very useful one. Good backup for if something happens to your Derek Crane. Like it gets negated or something like that. Or your search gets negated and you have this in hand still. Because you can still just slam this down. But a caveat, all your monsters have to be Earth Machines. If you have Jizukiru, you can't use this. If you can somehow make an Xyz monster with Jizukiru, like say Pegasus and a Jizukiru, do that. And make the Xyz, and then you'll be able to summon Super Express Bullet Train. Another caveat, you can't attack unless you have unless you send 2 other cards, but you know, under skill drain that doesn't matter, but so yeah. And of course also the graveyard effect. Lets you recycle anything in your graveyard. Any machine monster in your graveyard. And this says machine, it doesn't say Earth Machine, so you know, you can bring back Jizukiru if you need so. It also does mean any, so you can also like bring like say a Pegasus or a Ruffian Railcar. Oh, I probably should have mentioned this, but Ruffian Railcar also has like, you know, the great searching effect when it's sent to the graveyard, where you could just get a level 10 Earth Machine. So yeah, and if you've watched the versus Banished Stun, Gizmek Orochi, whatever, you'll know that if you get this and Super Express in the graveyard at the same turn via something like Anger Knuckle, you can just search with this and then bring it back with the Super Express Bullet Train, and then you could use a quick effect of Anger Knuckle. We'll get to that when we get to Anger Knuckle, but for now, that's something good. Single copy of Nibiru doesn't come up the most, but you know, it's just so good. There's so many games that get decided if you can just wipe your opponent's board with Nibiru, and this deck has many means to get rid of the token as well, so it's extremely rare that you're going to lose to the token. That's the main deck monsters. Let's go over spells. Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, Back Row Hate, nothing special there. Monster Reborn, this is always a good combo enabler. If you hit Pegasus with Reborn, it can special something else from the deck. So this can be a 1-card combo starter if you have the stuff in the graveyard already. Terraforming, you want these. These are really good searches. It's not the most 100% mandatory thing, but it's just so nice to have Switchyard. We already went over this. Pot of Desires. I see people through round 3. I have drawn 2 Desires off of Desires before, so I only run 2. That's about that. Switchyard, by far one of the most useful spells in your whole deck, and the reason we went Terraforming, of course, because the first effect is kind of because you can special summon any level 4 and it becomes level 10, but the issue with that is when you do this, your opponent takes no battle damage. So you can only do damage with stuff like Gangardai or Gustav. Or Dyson Sphere, but, you know, that's not really whatever. The more useful effect is that you can discard and search any machine monster with 1800 or more attack from your deck, which is basically all of them. It does say Earth Machine, of course, so careful of that. And also, you can only use one of the 2 searches per turn. Either the special summon or the search, so keep that in mind. And again, 99% of the time, you will be using the second effect, because losing battle damage is way too important when you have as much big beaters as you do in this deck. Called by Grave is also pretty standard, stops Maxi, Ash, all that good stuff. Urgent Schedule. Another great going second card. If your opponent has more cards than you do, more monsters, excuse me, you can just summon out a level 4 and a level 10 for free. There's pretty much nothing else about it. Although there is, of course, a caveat. Oh no, actually a bonus first. If you set this as some sort of back row removal bait, you get to just add a level 10 machine monster, so it becomes its own Ruffian Rail card, basically. But the caveat of this is you can only attack with machine monsters this turn. So if you use Urgent Schedule, don't try to be funny and make something like Ravenous Tarantula, because that won't work. Although this is pretty much the only part of this. And I have made this mistake already once, so yeah. Be careful about that. Everything else is machine, so you don't have to worry about that. This also does apply to Pentastag and Underclock. And Red Reboot is just... I haven't gotten the most use out of this yet, but it has already saved at least one game for me. I didn't save it because it was nothing too special. It was just a 2-turn. But if your opponent tries to hit you with something nasty, like, you know, a Judgment, you could just slam this and then they're done. Yeah, Judgment, Torrential, Compulse, Skill Drain. If you have your Xyz out already, this has completely shut it down. But the issue is, this doesn't work if something's already face up. So if your opponent already has something scary face up, like, say, Peekaboo, aka there can only be one, that is really bad. And this won't quite do its job, so that's where your back row hate comes up. Okay, extra deck. 2 Dreadnoughts, Gustav and Libe. Both of these are mandatory. This is just good, huge damage, and this is the beater that you go into right after to try to OTK. Quick note, Gustav is once per turn, soft, so you can, if you can summon 2 of them, do 4k damage. It doesn't come up that often though, so don't count on that too much. But you can certainly do that if you can get a really crazy play started with Urgent Schedule. Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer. This is kind of a niche pick, but it is still, the games where I have gotten to use it, it has completely saved the game, because this thing is basically a Harpy's Feather Duster on a stick that your opponent cannot respond to with spells and traps. So say, if they want to try to save their Forbidden Droplet, or something like that, or their Judgment to try to block this thing out, they can't. This thing will clear the board instantly. With the added bonus that when you attack with this thing, it has 5k attack, by the way, so, you know, it can beat over pretty much anything. So you could just beat over this, beat over anything, or Libe, depending on what's going on. Then you could just go into a 4-mat Zeus, and 4-mat Zeus is pretty good at just winning games for you, so there you go. Gangardai, just a good piece of removal in general. When combined with Derek, it becomes a double pop, which is really nice. And of course also still comes with burn damage, which is really nice. Quick caveat on this card cannot attack the turn you use this effect. And this includes if you say bring it back with Monster Reborn, this will still be unable to attack. So don't be cheeky with that. Dyson Sphere, Chaos Dyson Sphere is not the most useful. It's kind of really only here to make a 4-mat Zeus with minimal effort. Like, it's a little hard to go through, but basically, if you summon this thing, you just get 3 mats. You could also do a little bit of burn damage for free. This will be 900 because it does 300 for each Xyz material. And of course, if you battle something, you could attach it to a material, so this actually can work as really strong targeted removal. It still won't get you to 6 Mat Zeus, though, but it does mean that if you go, like, Dyson Sphere into Libe, you can hit Libe, hit so many times, 4 times, and then you'll still be able to go into 4 Mat Zeus. As attaching something is a very, very powerful form of destruction, because it doesn't destroy. So it bypasses destruction immunity or banish immunity. Dora, this is generally your going first monster. If you go first, you're making this best case scenario. Because this is a 4K wall, and you can just chain to anything and make this unaffected by card effects. And unless your opponent can make something with over 4,000 attack, which is still really rare, because the only thing I can think of that will actually like regularly come up is access code. And yeah, access code is pretty much the only thing I can think of that could regularly beat over this thing. Just be careful that you're not like jetting it immediately unless you're really sure your opponent isn't going to be able to negate this or anything. Because if you try to like pump this immediately and then you get hit by the prevent droplet, you're going to be in Sag. Okay, Ravenous Tarantula. This is just another kind of niche card, but this has definitely still done work before. Very powerful effect. All monsters you control, all is the word here, gain attack and defense equal to the difference between your LP and your opponent's. So if you're going to like if you're going into later turns and you've already done effect damage to your opponent, like say 4K, suddenly this thing gains 4K and gives your other stuff 4K. So if something happens to be up on the field right now, like say a Super Dora, suddenly your opponent is staring down a 7,200 attack thing that can make itself immune at any point. There's not a lot of opponent can do about this. They can try to get rid of this, and this thing does die to skill drain. So if your opponent has skill drain up, don't. And of course, also useful Raigeki with attack lower. It doesn't come up that much though. And it's not a quick effect either, so if your opponent does something like summon something in battle phase, tough shit. Okay, Zeus is Zeus. We all know how powerful he is. Just sending everything to the field. Although, of course, you always want to be a little careful of it when you have it on your side and you have the field spell up, because of course it will set your field spell off as well. And setting your own field spell can be risky, because if your opponent can break your Zeus and get through, you might be shit out of luck depending on how many cards you have in your hand. Alright. Let's go for our links. Pretty much all these are more like niche techs. You're not going to be making links very often with this deck. You're pretty much going to be only going for XCs. So, starting off, Underclock Taker. Recent video showed this thing. If your opponent has a big thing, but under 4K attack, and you have the ability to make this plus Libe, you can insta-kill without having to remove it. So if you say, make Libe using Night Express and Jizakiru, you could kind of just do whatever. And this doesn't have specific targets either. You can target anything your opponent has. Of course, again, one of the reasons this is niche is because it's really hard for this deck to get more than just the XZs on the board without Urgent Schedule or some other trickery with stuff like Pegasus or Monster Reborn. But still, in the situations that this can work, this can pretty much guarantee a win if it attacks. If your opponent has anything with less than 4,000 attack on board. Cleave Fort. I haven't gotten too much of this, use out of this, but this is like primarily for use with Urgent Schedule. Because this could search anything if you summon 2 things to this at the same time. To the arrows it's pointing at the same time. And this thing also has very good protection. It is completely immune to spell and traps. And also to link monsters. No battle immunity, so kind of rough, but oh well. It's still quite good. The target, it's just also kind of niche. But you can negate something with this. It hasn't really come up that much, though. Yeah, this is overall probably the thing I make the least. It's just... But there's nothing really else better to put in. I guess you could put in a third Gustav, but... That's a little overboard, in my opinion. Pentastag. This is if your opponent thinks, oh, haha, I can be safe if I just put my stuff in defense mode. And then suddenly you just bring this out, and then you smack the shit out of them with Libe. I have not shown this actually yet, but I've had a few games where I've attacked defense position stuff with Pentastag and won the game off of that. I just haven't gotten a game of that I can record yet. Anger Knuckle, two of them. It's I mostly use this if I have if I open with Railcar and something else, because I can make Ruffian, make whatever else follows up, and then I can make Anger Knuckle, which will let me search with this. Of course, like the best thing, well, yeah, important thing is that yes, it requires only machines. It has to be two machine monsters, so you can't say like, try to smack down Maxi or Ash with this thing and try to make it. You have to have two machines. But still, like, if you're going first or you're going second and you have Ruffian and Super Express in your hand, that is a value train right there. So it's not the worst. Plus, it is good at getting itself out of danger because you could just tribute itself or just send this again on the next turn to bring out the bullet train again, and then you get another double search. It can get out of control really fast and keep your hand nice and topped up. The other downside of this thing, of course, is that you can't use it as leak material, which is so annoying. It's so annoying sometimes, but I understand why. Also, I should say, Pentastag and Underclock Taker, these are also just super useful in general because it is generic effect monsters. So even if you say urgent schedule, bring out Derek, you could just normal summon your Ash Blossom or Max, and then you can make Underclock Taker or Pentastag. It works. So there's nothing wrong with it, or any other hand traps that you put in. And that's about that for what I run in the main. Let's talk about a few other things that I like to use. I think I have them in here. Do I not have this bookmark? Okay, hold on. Evenly Match. This is a great going second card. The issue with using Evenly Matched, though, is that you have to give up your battle phase, which is where you do all your damage. But if you really, really want to guarantee that you can get rid of their board and then put up a strong defense with Dora or something else, like a Zeus. Well, you won't be able to make Zeus, but still. If you could just put up a strong defense with Dora, sometimes that can just do it depending on what your opponent has. Especially if it's something that doesn't summon a lot of high attack stuff, like, say, Tri-Brigade. The highest attack thing they'll maybe make is, Appaloosa. Sometimes they'll have access code, though. It's not guaranteed, but I've seen it, so. Give and take, risk and stuff. Can't believe I don't have this bookmarked, but whatever. Droplet, another great good second card, but it's kind of hard to use because your hand space is kind of strapped a little bit already, and while discarding is good for some cards, it's just... I don't like it that much, in this deck in particular. Droplet, of course, is still an amazing card, but honestly, if you wanted to use this, I would probably rather use... Do I not have Chalice on here? Well, whatever. You could use Forbidden Chalice instead. This is also just fine. Does almost the same thing, although, of course, with Droplet, your opponent can't respond depending on what you send to, so if you send a monster, your opponent can't respond with a monster effect. And pretty much all the other hand traps, I don't really have a good way of saying it. But it really just depends on what you hate the most and what you want to see gone the most. So, say, if you hate Gytron the most, like I do, you can run a couple of Patrol and Lockbirds like this. Again, what I showed you with that 40 was the base. Everything after 40 is kind of for more tech cards or things that you want to hate. So... yeah, also, quick thing, Dark Ruler No More is also a thing I used to run, but the fact that your opponent just takes 0 damage entirely after you use this, it's... I can see why it's good. It breaks boards very easily, but still. It's just, it can't happen. That's about it. Imperm, Judgment, all that stuff. You can run Skill Drain in this deck. I should say that. You can run Skill Drain. Because this deck can, I've said this before, but it can play under Skill Drain because all these cards have negative downsides that get negated by Skill Drain. So, if you say have Skill Drain, you can just flop this, and then you have 7,800 damage, which, if your opponent has taken any prior damage, that is death. And if you have, say, something funny, like Chalice, which by the way also does work on these things. So if you have, say, Chalice, and you can only play this, you can put Chalice on this, and it becomes a 3400 attack beat stick that beats over basically everything. That you'll, well, not everything, but it'll still beat over pretty much a lot of important things, including, say, an Appaloosa. That's kind of staring you down and making you unable to use Derek or Bullet Train. But anyway. And as for the rest, again, it kind of more depends on what you hate and what you want to get rid of. And let's talk about something real quick. Pot of Avarice, it's not as good as it would seem, because some of the stuff you do want to keep in Graveyard, of course, so you can use with Pegasus. It's rare for a game to go long enough where Pot of Avarice will also be kind of relevant, because if your board gets broken, it's sometimes pretty hard for this deck to come back from something like that. Also, Gamma, I don't think you really have room to run Gamma, because Driver is just such an obnoxiously horrid brick. You can, of course, discard it with like Revolving Switchyard or Anger Knuckle, but that's about it for that deck. I think I've covered about all the bases that I can go through here, so I'm gonna end that here. Questions and comments and stuff. I'll try to keep checking this as much as possible. And best of luck when you use this, and just keep in mind the ride never stops. I guess I'll see you guys when I make the next video.